code and see what happens. I was doing a conference a couple of weeks ago and someone said, you know, we've been having a lot of conversations about QR codes. It's like, QR code is a quick response code that looks like a barcode, and there was a session about it earlier. You may have, they're all over the place now, but you scan them with your phone and it can take you to a website address or something like that. Anyway, they said, we've been having a lot of conversations about this. It's like, well, what about just trying something? I know that sounds crazy, but then you might have some data to let you know, is this working or not? Because each one of you has a unique set of stakeholders with unique online behaviors. And it's important for you to find out, are my folks online? Are they on Twitter? Where are they? Let me try these different things and see what kind of response I can get, all right? So, to understand that online engagement cycle. So, when we're talking about websites, and a lot of you, know this, but Cindy was nice enough to kind of send me the list of people who registered, so I went and looked through quite a few of your websites. And so I see some like squirming. Don't judge me by my website, please. But you need an updated, easy to navigate site. You know, I've gone to some websites and you look at the navigation and it's like Donner, Blitzen, and Rudolph. And I don't know if you're into Santa Claus or reindeer or what's going on, because, partly it's because from writing grants and stuff, we often get into this nonprofit speak. We work with at-risk youth and blended communities. It's like, could you tell me what you do? Okay? And that it's updated on a regular basis. Does anyone have to call someone or send them an email every time you want to change a sentence on your website? Yeah. So I'd love you for that not to be the case, because when something happens, we're in a kind of a pretty short, news cycle, and things happen pretty quickly. When someone makes an announcement, so for example, I was in North Carolina not too long ago, and they talked about this huge increase in the African American population of HIV infections. If I deal with HIV and AIDS, the next day I should be saying, have you heard about this crisis in our community? This is what we're doing about it, support us. Because then people are fired up. If this has to go through a committee and it needs to be approved by our lawyers, then the executive director wants to wordsmith it, the moment's gone. Okay? All right, so an updated, easy to navigate site. That donor and member engagement. What I advocate for folks, have you gone to your website and put yourself into the shoes of a donor? Okay, because most folks come to a website with a task or a mission in mind. I want to make a donation. I want to find out more about your program. I want to sign up for your event or your workshop. So can you put yourself in their shoes and see, how do I have to get there? Do I have to go through kind of all these Byzantine things and go through all these pages? Is there a way for me to get there easily? And also, are you using engaging language? Because there's a big difference between this is who we are and this is what we do, and join us, help us solve this, work with us on this, right? Okay. Of course, online donation and email tools. Are any of you using PayPal to accept online donations? Okay, some of you. I have really nothing against PayPal. I think it's really good for e-commerce. I don't think it's great for donations. There's lots of things about PayPal that you're not able to customize and have that kind of higher touch donor experience. There's a great organization called Idealware. The word ideal and then W-A-R-E, Idealware. They're the software, kind of the consumer reports for nonprofit software. They've got a great report about some low-cost online donation tools. Okay. I had a client recently who ran a program, who ran a fundraising campaign and was using Google Checkout because they could customize it and they could pull data out, and they were really, enthralled with all the kind of tech and whiz stuff they could do. Afterwards, they were like, all right, you can say you told us so. Because so many people got frustrated with it or it wasn't working for them. And like I say, I think those things are great for online commerce, but not as good for donations. And if you don't believe me, there is a site called paypalsucks.com. That coordination between the online and the offline. Again, I gave you that example of when I get a letter from you announcing a new initiative or a fundraising campaign, to have that connection. Because we don't just interact with folks online, it's both online and offline. Easy social media sharing. There are several great tools like Add This, Share This, and there are others where you add them to your website. Every time you create a new piece of content, it's very easy for me to click and I can share it immediately on Facebook, on Twitter, on Google+, wherever I might want to share it. If you don't have those tools, I'd strongly recommend that you put that on your to-do list, to add that easy social media sharing, because it's so much easier for me to do that. Find the URL and then copy it, and then if I go to Twitter, it's going to take up my entire, the entire thing I want to write on Twitter just with your URL, and that's not really effective. So easy social media sharing. And what some of you may have already, and I know, for example, Donor Pro has this available, and so do other vendors, the combination of CRM and CMS. Now, if you don't know, CRM is Constituent Relationship Management. It's a fancy name for your database. Okay? And CMS is Content Management System. It's a software system you use to manage the content on your website. What's happened now, there are programs like Civi CRM and other ones that can combine this. And so, for example, if you have a donor wall on your website, if I go in and I make a donation online, within minutes of my making a donation, if I don't want to be anonymous, if I refresh that donor page, boom, that information is there. So think about how normally that works. Someone makes a donation, it goes to the database. The data kind of sits there until someone exports it. Then someone may have to import it into another program, reformat it, and then the next time the website gets updated, it's pushed into there. So you can see the savings in the administrative kind of process that has to happen. Same with other things, that as soon as I go and register for an event, boom, it can be up there on, here are the people who are going to be attending. So as you're thinking about if you're revising your website or things like that, or if you're looking at a new database, understand that that's possible. But again, it has to be about a strategy. Why would you want to do that? Just because you can doesn't mean that you necessarily should. If there's a good reason for it, if you have a donor wall, if there are other reasons why you want data that gets entered into your database to show up on your website, and just have that kind of seamless integration, and there's lots of good examples of that. All right, so what I consider the 4 C's of websites that are the important attributes? One is the credibility. I don't get to meet you or your great staff. Your website has that 15 to 30 seconds to really prove to me that you're a credible organization. And unfortunately, the stories that make it in the press are, people that have embezzled money from nonprofits, or people who are fake nonprofits, all those things that, we don't need any of that, all right? But, for example, when I'm an online donor, and because I have, relationships with folks in this part of the country, I'm a potential online donor for you. When I go to your website and I'm about to make a donation, one of the first things I look for is your financial information. Do you have your 990 up? Do you have your annual report up? Do I have other information about what money you collect and how you spend it? And I've actually had this conversation with the board within the last 6 months, which was like, oh, we don't want to put our financial information up. Okay, well, let's go to GuideStar and look at your 990, and here's the information that's already there. Why would you put it on your website and make it easier for your donors to find? Why are you going to make it harder for your donors to make a donation? And so, yeah, that caused a moment of silence. Didn't really have an answer for that. All right, cultivation. This outreach and building relationships, which again is not only important on your website and email, but in social media. And like I said, it has to do with that. Are you asking people to, this is how you can join us and help us, how you can help us, solve this issue or make progress toward it. So really that kind of relationship building. And again, the same goes for social media. If I go to your Facebook page and you've posted something and someone made a comment about a great article and you haven't responded, you're really discouraging other folks from responding because you're not having that conversation. And most folks are like, oh my God, I have a conversation with all my donors or members. I'm talking about saying thanks. It takes that long, okay? Same on Twitter. Somebody retweets something, just saying, thanks for the retweet. That goes a long way toward being acknowledged. And I'm just not, I just don't have ATM stamped on my forehead. You're just banging me to try and get more 20s out of me. I'm actually a person with ideas and who cares about your organization and that you care about. All right, and then clickability. that kind of interactive user experience that allows me to do different things. You know, one of the challenges for a lot of websites I see are they are so text heavy. There are very few pictures. I did a website audit for an organization in this area, and you know, I went through and I looked at all the website, and I had to say to them, you know, if I just judged you by your website, you serve 90% white people and a few kids of color. And they're like, oh, you know, actually the opposite is true. But based on the images on their website, you know, that wasn't really true. So making sure that, you know, that you've got images and that you think of different ways to present information. Are there maps that can show where you work or where your services are offered or the places where your programs are held, things like that? How can I make it kind of more clickable or interesting? I've seen other organizations say, for example, you know, how many homeless children are there in shelters in Pittsburgh? Is it 100, 1,000, 2,000? Somebody answers, and then you come up and you say, no, well, you thought it was 100, but actually it's almost 2,000, and then blah, 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 blah. And those aren't actual figures, I'm just making this up. But that kind of interactive, more interactive user experience, not just blocks of text. And I know for a lot of us, myself included, we were brought up to write for print. So when I'm asking folks to contribute content, they're like, oh, I've got to write, you know, 1,500 pages, and it's going to have, you know, footnotes and a bibliography. You know, no, this is the internet, okay? A great piece of content can be 2 paragraphs and a picture. A woman came into our office, she needed help with daycare, and she wanted some parenting skills classes. I gave her the information, she hugged me and left. It's a great story, okay? And it's quick, it's short, it's to the point. And you know, if the volunteer person has a great story about a great volunteer, they could be contributing that. The program person about the program, the development person about development folks.